Hi, today we're going to be going over functional behavior assessments and behavior assessments. My name is Alexandra Kantonovichus. I am 27 years old and live in Northern Nevada. I have a broad range of experience in the field. I started as an RBT in 2017. I've worked with clients ranging from 2 years old to 20 years old. My clients have all had a diagnosis of autism, but I've also worked with clients who have additional diagnoses such as Down syndrome, Angelman syndrome, mood disorders, schizophrenia, psychosis, seizure disorders, intellectual disability, and ADHD. In Las Vegas, I worked for a private company and delivered services in the home clinic and in schools. When I relocated to Northern Nevada, I began to work exclusively in homes. Currently, my field experience is taking place in a home. I have two clients that are 3 and 4 years old. I am being supervised by a BCBAD who's worked in the field for 11 years and a BCBA who's worked in the field for 4 years. When I graduate, I plan to initially practice in home. The company I work for is planning to open a clinic in Northern Nevada, and when the clinic is complete, I'll take clients in the clinic as well. I would love to eventually work in schools, but I believe I should spend a few years gaining experience in the home and clinic setting before taking on the challenge of working as a BCBA with a full caseload in schools. My experience with behavioral assessments is limited to the coursework I've completed at Ball State. I've not had an opportunity to run behavioral assessments outside of my assignments for school, but I did have the opportunity to go over them and my company's procedures with one of my BCBAs. This project will help prepare me for running behavioral assessments or functional behavior assessments in the field when I'm a BCBA. Before we can get into functional behavior assessments and functional assessments, we have to answer the question, what is problem behavior? Severe problem behavior includes any behavior that is dangerous to the individual or those around them. Examples of severe problem behavior include aggression, self-injurious behavior, elopement with safety concerns, such as running into the street, and property destruction with safety concerns, such as throwing breakable or heavy objects like a desk in the classroom. Problem behavior also includes dangerous behaviors, but it's more broad than severe problem behavior. Problem behavior includes behaviors that prevent the client from making socially significant growth. Examples of problem behavior overlap a bit, but they can also include elopement to another area of the room, tantrums, crying, whining, moderate self-injurious behaviors like biting nails, um, property destruction, such as ripping papers when a demand is placed, or aggressive behaviors that aren't severely dangerous, like growling at your RBT when they give an instruction. Problem behaviors can be addressed when needed, but severe problem behaviors should be addressed immediately due to the risk of injury to the individual and those around them. So, going over some of the important concepts of a functional behavior assessment. One of the goals of a functional behavior assessment is to understand why a person does a specific behavior or what function the behavior serves for that person. Without understanding the function of the behavior, the effectiveness of an intervention is inconsistent. Functional behavior assessments are mandated and evidence-based practice when students' problem behaviors interfere with their learning. Some things to know, behavior is not random. Behaviors occur for a reason for the individual. The FBA process helps identify the reason the behavior occurs. Functional behavior assessment is a process, not a single procedure of indirect assessments and direct observations, as well as functional analysis aimed at determining the environmental events associated within the target behavior. Interventions are based upon the behavior's function are more likely to be maintained over time than interventions not based on function. So that's one of the main reasons why it's important to do a functional assessment or functional behavior assessment. During the FBA process, The behavior analyst analyzes antecedent and consequences as well as antecedent consequence pairings to identify the function of the behavior. Remember, antecedents are environmental events prior to the behavior occurring, and consequences are behavioral events that occur immediately after the behavior of interest. The behavior analyst should evaluate the four functions of behavior consequences as possible functions for the target behavior. The four functions of behavior being evaluated are sensory, tangible access, escape or elopement, and attention. In isolation, indirect and direct observations demonstrate correlation between the environment and the behavior only when a functional analysis is conducted within the FBA process to verify the function. When implementing a functional behavior assessment, you must begin with record review to identify medical conditions or previous behavior assessments. When doing behavioral interviewing, use open-ended questions to drive the hypothesis of the antecedent and consequence to the behavior. This will increase efficacy of the FBA process. Using yes or no questions will not give the detail needed to determine antecedents and consequences. I noticed in my company's interview questions, they use open-ended questions, but also have an area for yes or no questions. When discussing this with my BCBA, she recommended taking notes of additional information that the stakeholders share during the yes and no portion. When developing data collection methods for direct observation, consider the convenience and strength of the method to allow for ease by data collectors while collecting the most information. If the data is not able to be taken accurately, an alternative method of data collection should be used. Provide adequate training to the data collectors to ensure that data being collected is accurate. An FBA is complete when 6 outcomes have been achieved. A clear description of the problem behavior has been developed. Identification of the immediate antecedents that predict when the problem behavior occurs or does not occur. Identification of setting events, times, and situations that predict when the problem behavior will or will not occur across a range of daily routines. Identification of the consequences that maintain the problem behavior. Development of one or more summary statements or hypotheses that describe specific behaviors, a specific type of situation in which they occur, and the outcomes or reinforcers maintaining them in that situation. Collection of direct observation data that supports summary statements has been developed. So when do you run an FBA? A functional behavior assessment should be ran when a problem behavior occurs that needs the function identified. The organization I work for includes functional behavior assessments in every initial assessment. This means that every client within the company has received at least one functional behavior assessment. Different companies may have different protocols and procedures. So what is a functional assessment? A few things you need to know about functional assessments include that they're valid, practical, and humane. This makes them an important part of developing treatment for individuals who engage in severe problem behavior. There is no standard functional assessment. Direct observation and measurement of severe problem behavior under at least 2 different conditions in which the environmental event is hypothesized to be relevant to the severe problem behavior is then manipulated. Partnerships between stakeholders with a relevant history and the client engaging in the severe problem behavior, as well as an expert in functional assessments and contingency management, are important for designing effective functional assessments. High risk problem behaviors also make it necessary to consider safeguards tailored to the intensity and specific form of the severe problem behavior. So you may wear arm guards if your client bites. That would be an example of a safeguard that would be necessary during a functional behavior assessment to keep a practitioner safe. Indirect and descriptive assessments don't replace functional assessments. Open-ended, indirect, or descriptive assessments are essential Experimentally and ecologically valid results are most likely to occur when using these methods. If an additional functional assessment doesn't provide useful information, the assessment should be redesigned based on information that was provided during the open-ended, indirect, or descriptive assessments. So why do we conduct a functional assessment? Functional assessments have been successfully used for low rates and high rates of severe problem behaviors in session with a long duration, extremely dangerous behaviors by arranging for the consequences to follow milder forms of problem behavior that precede the severe problem behavior, and covert severe problem behaviors by applying the hypothesized reinforcers to an arbitrary response, such as a micro switch press or a PEX board. Some of the methods for collecting functional assessment information fall into three strategies. Informant methods, which is a Q&A with stakeholders using open-ended questions regarding the problem behaviors. These can also be used to determine antecedent and consequences of the behavior. Direct observation, which is systematically observe the person with problem behavior in his or her daily routine, recording the problem behavior, what occurred directly before and after the problem behavior using the three-term contingency. And systematic manipulation of conditions, which is a functional and structural analysis. You observe the behavior while systematically manipulating the environment. So my organization is a large corporation. We operate in, I believe, 5 states in the United States. For my organization specifically, indirect and direct FBAs are ran during initial assessments. My BCBA uses FAST, as well as functional analysis. The FBA includes indirect and direct observations. The functional analysis is when you break up the function of the behavior to see what the function is. When to run this depends on the company and what resources are given. My BCBA recommends using layman terms when using the Q&A portion with families to make sure that they understand what the questions are asking. So you may need to break down the questions a bit further. She recommends including a document of notes of the client's skills. How are their communication? What are their social skills? How are their self-care skills, such as getting dressed? It takes her 1 to 2 hours to run a functional assessment, but this definitely changes with each practitioner. For my company, a functional assessment needs to be ran using FBA indirect tools such as FAST or QFAB, which is questions about behavioral function, for each problem behavior that's targeted. For testing direct observation, we use VB-MAP, ABLES, or PEAK, and take notes in a document for anything that you can't notate in that application. Direct tools during another indirect tool that's used during an FBA is the cohort acuity tool. This is used to determine current skills. Minimum, each client has at least one FBA, and a functional assessment is optional. My organization begins the process with an indirect observation and parent interview. Then a direct observation is made using a direct observation tool such as FAST. With the remaining assessment time, a report and treatment plan are created. We use CentralReach for data and graphing. The process from beginning to end depends on the BCBA's skill level and the parent's cooperation. Our company approves 10 hours for initial assessments and reassessments. FBAs are ran during this process. You can run 2 direct observations if you need to with specific clients. Any hours you have left over will be used to work on the report. If any additional functional assessment or functional behavior assessment is needed, it can be provided upon request from the organization with insurance authorization. So for me, something I'd really like to learn a little more about is actually giving a functional assessment from start to finish with a client. I learn the best by doing, and so that would help me really fully understand the process. Um, I believe that my coursework and my field experience are teaching me the same concepts for a functional assessment. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask during the discussion board. I tried to cover this to the best of my ability, but my time limit has run out. I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Thank you for listening. For my references, I used 3 textbooks, including Teaching and Behavioral Support for Children and Adults with Autism Spectrum Disorder, Functional Behavior Assessment, Diagnosis and Treatment, and Functional Assessment and Program Development. Due to the nature of these materials, I cannot attach them to the slideshow. But I am willing to answer any questions in the discussion board regarding them. In the discussion board, I'm also going to include some of the materials that my company uses, such as FAST, ACT, PEAK, that may be useful to you when you begin running functional behavior assessments.